practice standing in the truth of that version of you, knowing that your nervous system, most likely for any creative, has been primed to look for people who might reject you based on your authenticity. It is the creative's journey. Did you know that your dreams will always require your healing? It's true, and that could be why you freeze or shut down whenever you try to move towards your own brilliant creativity. This podcast exists to show you exactly why that is and how to move towards creating the things that only you can. So let's go. I'm Courtney Lancaster, and this is the Heal Create podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Heal Create podcast. I am Courtney, obviously, and I'm so happy you're here, and I'm really excited about the topic today, and just as excited for my co-host, who you might recognize from last season, my wonderful executive assistant and editor, Emily.
Hi. I'm so happy to be with you.
I'm so happy that you're here. I've actually got a lot of feedback on the soothingness of your voice. It was so lovely to listen to you. So I just need to bring you back. Plus, I think Emily has been working with me for a couple years now, but you're also a life coach yourself as well as a creative. And so we get to have these really awesome conversations about the topics that we deal with as creatives, and then also that like our clients deal with as well. So it's really perfect. It's a perfect setup for the kind of topic that we want to tackle today, which is cringiness. Cringe. The cringe. Feeling cringy and then being afraid to be cringe. It's like obviously it's definitely a pop culture word, but it's a word that describes this feeling of either the secondhand embarrassment that you feel when you're watching somebody express themselves in one way or the other, which, spoiler alert, is it's just a trigger. And then the flip side is you being afraid that people are feeling that secondhand embarrassment about you and what that might mean for you. And the reason why I wanted to talk about it was because I honestly think it's such a brilliant way for your brain to keep you from expressing yourself and creating. And it's something that I actually hear a lot from my clients, especially when it comes to posting or any kind of actual art that they want to create, is that fear around like, maybe they wouldn't exactly even use the word cringe, but it's that fear of like what other people would think, basically, and then people pulling away because of that expression. And as a creative myself, especially around music, I find that it's a barrier for me as well. So do you have anything to add to that definition?
I would say I feel like, well, we mentioned this a little bit before when we were chatting about what we were going to say, but it's something that comes up for a lot of people, and we maybe like slap the word cringe on it without realizing that there's so much underneath it. So I feel like it's kind of like we get to dig a little bit deeper today and unpack actually what's coming up for us when we do feel that. So it's not just like, oh, we're going to think about how to get rid of the cringy feeling. It's more so what's coming up underneath, and then how can we be with ourselves as we're processing through the stuff that's coming up around sharing, expressing, posting, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think that it might be a great place to start by talking about what happens when we feel that like cringy feeling when we're watching someone else express themselves. Yeah. I've heard the word used in a really cruel way. I'm sure we all have. Like even my 12-year-olds will be like, ugh, that's so cringe. And I think, it's so unfair. It's like this snap judgment of like canceled, like, ew, no. And it's something that I think we're so afraid of in so many ways of that happening to us. But let's talk about what is happening when it happens for you, that you feel the secondhand embarrassment. You have brought up a really good example of like when people are on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
tell us
would
about it.
say not so much anymore, but when I was a little bit younger, or maybe a couple of years ago, I can distinctly remember feeling this when I was a kid. At a party, if someone was going to sing or dance, or like if someone was like showing people something that they could do or wanted to do, I would like want to run away for them. It was so intense. It definitely feels a little bit like shame in terms of like I just want to like not be in my body and I just want to hide, and like this kind of takes you over. So that's how it feels for me. But it would be like I would get red. Like I could feel myself kind of really taking on that secondhand embarrassment for them, which now I can see was more so about me not feeling safe enough to maybe do what they were doing. And it was just triggering that feeling in myself. But it was almost as if I was the one up there doing that.
Yeah. Well, so what do you think was actually happening in you? If we can, I mean, I think we can agree that it's obviously a trigger that you experienced. It's a trigger that anyone at any age, if they feel that way about someone else's expression, is experiencing a trigger. So what do you think the trigger was for you?
I had this trigger around doing something and then being made fun of. So the kind of experience of someone laughing at me instead of with me felt really scary. So I would kind of close off my expression. Maybe I wouldn't say a joke or do something silly just in case I would get laughed at, because that feeling felt so scary. I think even now as an adult, like it's taken me a long time to feel safe enough to express in certain ways with Judah, my husband. And I notice even with friends, like I can only do it with certain friends that I've created a lot of safety with. But yeah, it was, I think, a mixture of feeling afraid of being laughed at and made fun of. And then also there was this piece mixed in that was like, I wish I could do that. Like, I wish I felt like I could do what that person was doing. And so I would feel that discomfort. I think that's what the cringy feels like. It's just like a, ugh, like gross kind of feeling. So I think that was part of it too. Seeing someone do something that I wish that I could do, and maybe judging myself a little bit for not being able to. So maybe a few layers in there, but
I think you nailed that. And it makes me think of, so if you think of like the 5 core emotions, disgust is one of those 5 core emotions, and it's very protective. Disgust is like the thing that keeps us from eating moldy cheese. You know, we're like, ugh. Or like when somebody is doing something that we don't like, maybe we'll go like, ugh, like, ugh, I don't want to do that. I don't want you anywhere near me. And so that cringy feeling is actually protective. It's a protective feeling that people experience, even when they're rude about it, even when they're like, ew, gross, cringe. Like even the ew word is part of the disgust family, which is a protective emotion. So when I think about, for me, the things that I can specifically remember feeling that like secondhand embarrassment, that like cringy, it was, we talked about this earlier too, but comedy. Like there's this movie, Borat, that came out, I mean, I don't know, years and years ago. I remember a bunch of my friends really enjoyed it, and it was the least enjoyable entertainment experience ever for me. And it was supposed to just be this like really genius, hilarious thing. And I couldn't even watch it, because it was this guy that was like, he was basically trying to trick a bunch of people. So it was sort of like, he was pretending, I honestly don't even totally remember, but he was pretending to be really like not self-aware and really obnoxious, and would go into these real life situations and act outrageously, and then just to get people's reactions. Could not handle it at all. Like,
so
I was
funny.
just like, I couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Or like, even I remember the early episodes of The Office and how there were
Oh.
like so many moments in that show where, you know, back in the day with Michael Scott, you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's going to do that. Like, it was just
Yeah.
like,
I feel that now
And
watching it. I do not like that
yes.
show.
Yeah, because of that?
Yeah, I'm like, what is he doing? Like, this is just too
Yeah.
much. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
Britishness in me, you know? Like,
Yeah,
you can't really
right.
be too much. You gotta, like,
Yeah.
make sure you're not offending anyone. But anyway, I don't like The
Yes.
Office.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's that it is that thing. So I think for me when I'm thinking about that, I just remember like thinking how awful it would be if that many people were talking about me behind my back or were like weirded out by me or were like not wanting to be around me or didn't know what to make of me because of what I was doing. And this like Borat guy was like putting himself in situations for those specific reactions and I couldn't handle it. And I think creatives that tend to be so sensitive to what makes things beautiful, what makes beautiful art, like wanting to put our own spin or flavor or fingerprints on different like projects or like really present something that we've imagined in our head also makes us very sensitive to what other people think.
Yeah.
And it's honestly that sensitivity to the inner workings of other people that I think helps us in our creativity so much and really helps us like connect to other people through our art and through our creation. But it's also the thing that makes us very aware of what they might be thinking when they're not pleased with us, when they don't like us, they don't like the things that we create. And it can be paralyzing. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what for you is something that you're noticing that fear is a barrier to your expression in your life or has been in your life?
Yeah. Well, I think one that is a little bit more recent for me, and this is something that I've just been thinking about in the last couple of months, but I've felt for a really long time that I have wanted to show up more in terms of sharing, whether that's around coaching and resources or just like sharing my life. Like I'm noticing this desire that I do want to be seen in different ways, but it has honestly taken me like 2 years to be able to do what I'm doing like right now, which I have been sticking to my writing practice once a week.
And publishing it.
Yeah. It's on my Substack, which is has been so fun and so fulfilling. But I was feeling like, who wants to hear from me every week? Like, why would I share something once a week? That's obviously too much. No one's going to care. Why would I do that? Who do I think I am to have something to say that someone would care about receiving in that way? Because I think there's a difference between social media and then longer form writing too. It's like you're a little bit more invested. It's not like a reel that you just watch and you just like on to the next thing. It feels like a little bit, it has a little bit more weight to it for me.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I was really feeling. And I kind of just had to notice those thoughts and parts that were coming up around it was being cringe or people thinking that I'm being cringe. And I think it's about sharing and feeling like I have something to say, because that also translates into sharing on Instagram. Like I kind of am a little judgy towards the influencers, if I'm being completely honest.
Oh, yeah.
I noticed that about myself. I'm like, ugh, you know, like,
yeah.
Why?
Is it like a who do they think they are?
A little bit. Yeah. Maybe it's about like, how can you do that? And like, what makes you different from everybody else? You get to kind of live this life by doing what you do. But I want to share my life. I want to show up, not in that specific way, but I want to be able to post when I want to post instead of overthinking it and like wondering if people think, what am I doing? And like, who does she think she is? So it's kind of like that same thing. But yeah, that's been something I'm working through. Even now, I feel like the Substack writing feels pretty good right now. But on the other side of like maybe sharing on Instagram or social media, that does not feel like the safest thing to do right now, which I know it won't always feel like that. But it definitely is
Yeah.
something that is coming up for me in real time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I have so many questions, Emily. Okay. Because you're representing a whole generation of people that are wrestling with the same thing. I remember Jenna Kutcher, who is like one of the probably most popular motivational influencers on Instagram.
Yeah.
And she talked about how in the beginning she had to push through that fear of being cringy, which I'm like, I can understand. I'm like thinking about if she's in a group of friends, she was from the Midwest, and she just started posting these videos about, here's how I do this, and here's how I do this. Like, her close group of friends would probably be like, girl, what you trying to do? But to me, who just started following her, a couple of years ago or whatever, I just think it's been so great to watch her journey of expansion and the things that she's put out there. It never crossed my mind, like, ugh, like, who does she, like, why would she, I just was introduced to her that way. I'm like, yeah, that is who she is.
Yeah.
And I think that for anyone that wants to grow a community, run a movement, sell a product, like, you do have to have that audacity muscle to be like, no, I am this. Yeah. And I know myself, if you do know yourself authentically, who your most loved version of yourself is, who you authentically are, then you have to practice standing in the truth of that version of you, knowing that your nervous system, most likely for any creative, has been primed to look for people who might reject you based on your authenticity. It is the creative's journey. Yeah. It's like the creative's path. So I wonder for you, my question is, why do you think you judge influencers? And my second question, which you can get to, is who are you afraid that people will think that you are, that you're really not, when you say they're going to ask, who do you think you are? And it kind of sounds like that's the question you're asking to these influencers. Who do they think they are?
Yeah.
So many of us do that, so you're not alone there. But
yeah, I totally, I have conversations with friends about this. So it's definitely something I think a lot of us feel, but I think that I judge influencers because I'm perceiving them to not care about this. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm on the other side of receiving their content, what they're putting out, and it's kind of like that shameless thing of like, I'm just going to do whatever I want and I'm going to express myself in this way. And maybe I think that they don't care about what people think about them. And I wish I could feel like that. So I'm kind of like, ugh, there's like that jealousy even. Like, they can do that, but I can't because of the way I feel, or maybe I'm different or not capable or whatever it is that's coming up. But I think even just that self-expression and feeling like you can show up in that way, it's attractive to me, I think. And I think to a lot of people too. Like, it doesn't have to look like social media, but to be able to show up and share what you love and talk about things you like,
how you're doing things and the success you're having, and
like, look at this recipe I make. Like, it's just and it's also fun. Like, they get to have like a fun job. I know it's a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's not just like you wake up in the morning and you don't do anything. I think it definitely has more to do with myself than it does to do with anyone else that I'm perceiving.
Yeah. Well, and I think to understand jealousy, you have to understand how inspiration works.
Yes.
Anytime we're inspired by something in someone else, or we admire something, they're just mirroring back to us a part of ourselves that maybe we haven't embodied yet, we haven't lived out yet. Jealousy is inspiration plus scarcity. So I am seeing a piece of myself mirrored back to myself, but I don't have the resources or the permission to embody that. That's the subconscious belief. I don't have the resources or the permission to embody that part of me. And so it's not fair that they get to and I don't.
Yeah.
That's jealousy. So I wonder how many of us are watching other people like, ugh, who do they think they are? And really what's deep underneath that is the jealousy and wishing that we could express ourselves and really like romanticize our lives the way that influencers do. Because like that's the thing that I think with influencers, we're like, well, life's not really like that though. That's so stupid. Like, no, life includes challenges. Life includes all sorts of, but the truth is like romanticizing your life, if you have self-awareness and you know deeply that you're okay and you're able to handle challenges when they come up, is not a bad way to live. It's actually a really healthy way to live. Celebrating everything. Like, it doesn't have to be an avoidant way to live. But so many of us don't feel safe enough to just jump into celebratory romanticizing of our lives and our art and our processes. And so when we see other people doing it, it feels really unfair.
Yeah. And I was just thinking as you were saying that, I know we've mentioned on other podcasts like the nervous system and polyvagal theory, but I think this ties into that kind of dorsal mindset of shutdown of like nothing's good. How can someone else have something that's good? Like you have to look at all these like hard, bad things.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll just never be able to get that. Like what's even the point in trying? Like those really kind of weighty, small. It keeps you quite small when you're in that space.
Yeah.
That's how we're perceiving what other people is doing, and our nervous system dictates the way we see the world. So I think there's also that nervous system dysregulation piece that comes into it as well.
Yes, exactly. And I don't even think it's a piece. I think it's like the whole the whole thing that's happening is your nervous system does not sense safety to express yourself.
Yeah.
And the sadness of that is protected by the judgment of other people. Like we don't know how to feel our sadness, that we don't feel safe enough to be so free. So then we instead go to judgment.
Yeah.
Like,
so
I
much
cannot
easier.
believe them. So much easier. So much easier.
Yeah.
And really smart. It keeps us protected from our own sadness.
Yeah.
But it also keeps us from living out the lives that we're here to live.
Yeah.
So who are you afraid that people are going to say, who does she think she is?
Yeah.
Like what are those things that you're afraid that they're gonna say? Who does she think she is?
It's a good question. I think, am I trying to be someone that I'm not? Being fake in a way, like putting out this image that actually isn't true. And there's like that scared feeling of, oh, will they find me out? The imposter syndrome. But someone saying like, oh, well, I know her and she's like actually not like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, she's lying.
Or I'm also thinking of another thing as we're talking about this, but it's changing and like showing up in a different way than perhaps you have in the past. And then someone kind of saying like, you've changed, and how sometimes changing doesn't feel safe. Like it feels safer to stay the same and to have people stay the same around you too. Like if you're in a relationship with someone and they start to do these things that maybe you want to do, it's like, well, you've changed. And that can feel like disconnection, I think.
Yeah, which is like the root of so much of our nervous system's reaction is the fear of being alone.
Yeah.
Fear of being judged, fear of like, there's, so many ways that our nervous system is just trying to protect us from, being judged and being abandoned. Yeah. Which is smart because your body knows you can't survive on your own. But what your nervous system doesn't know is that we are actually surrounded by so many loving people. And we can cultivate the inner resources to feel safe no matter what.
Yeah.
And that it actually gets to feel really fun to be your authentic self in the world. And there's so much inner child work, I think, that goes into knowing that. I remember, I'm sure I've shared it on this podcast before, maybe in someone else's podcast, but I remember one time I was, okay, picture this. I was I was 13, maybe 12 years old, maybe my son's age. and I was twirling baton in the rain outside on the driveway on the front of my house. And I was listening to Spice Girls really loud. Really loud. You're welcome, everyone, for this visual. I was literally like, you know, those moments I was like in a movie. I was just in the zone. I was having so much fun. I was pretending I was the sixth Spice Girl that twirls the baton, probably.
Spice Girls will do that.
Yes, they will pull out that inner, like, yeah, prima donna in you. So I remember having like just a very true self, like, time in my life. Nobody was there with me. I was just like imagining myself center stage, like performing. And my dad comes out, and I love my dad, but not his best parenting moment. Comes out, slams off the stereo, and he's like, "What are you doing? What are the neighbors going to think?"
Oh.
And it was crushing. I remember very clearly the contrast in emotions in my body, like elation to absolute shame. And that was so painful that I think it's like been, you know, something, we all have moments like that moment when your true self was rejected. And then it wasn't even rejected. It was like the threat of other people might reject you for this as well. And I wasn't doing anything wrong. It was like lightly raining. It wasn't like it was a hurricane. It was just, so I think that the inner child work that comes with creating safety within yourself to actually, you know, create again is, it's real and it's really needed. Like that girl in me needs, you know, and I've given her a lot of compassion and new experiences and safety. And obviously, like, we might need support in a therapist or coach or group or whatever in order to do that, journaling. But that's a big part of it, because without that, we really will have, that part of me was so strong in keeping me from doing anything that somebody might be embarrassed for me. Where this shows up for me the most is in singing. And I have such a hard time singing and putting out music. I mean, decreasingly as the years go by, but I'm not a bad singer. It's not like I'm just like,
no, you're an incredible singer.
Thank you.
Yes.
I didn't mean to, I wasn't fishing. It was just like, I've had a lot of experience singing.
Yes.
So, you know, it's not like, I'm brand new at this and it's like, it's the thing that brings me the most joy, the thing potentially that I really love to share. I love to create with other people. And I think that's why it feels so vulnerable to me to put it out there. So when I asked you the question, who are you afraid people will say, who do you think you are? My who do you think you are is, there's a few of them. When it comes to sharing emotional health, nervous system information, sharing inspiration, or, you know, my own kind of armchair philosophy around healing, I have run into like, who do you think you are? Like, do you think you're an expert? Like, do you think that you're like a professional? I mean, I am a professional, but do you think that I remember having someone in my circle who is a therapist. When I very first started, he reached out and was like, you just got to be careful because, you know, you're not a licensed therapist. Like, you can't just offer, you need to say, and I remember just being like mortified. But at this point I've shared so much that I feel like I do know a lot around this topic. And I've done this now professionally for a few years. And I feel comfortable that if somebody were to say, who do you think you are? Around that passion of mine, I'd be like, I know who I am, and I might not be for you. And that's fine. I've done a lot of work around that. With music though, it's like, who do you think you are? Do you think you're cool? Do you think you're young? Do you think that your lyrics are good or important? What are you trying to do here? That's what I've imagined. Like, I honestly can come up with like conglomerate of like 3 or 4 people from like the last, my 20s especially, that I could just imagine like being like, what is she doing?
Yeah, like kind of sassy and mean.
Sassy. Yes,
Yeah.
sassy and mean. And it's something that I work with and I will continue to work with. I mean, that's honestly like my biggest goal while I'm here, is to sing as much as possible, to make as much music as possible. But it has not been easy, combined with the fact that I was a Christian worship leader, not on a global scale, not on a national, visibility scale, but like it was a big part of my life. And so the thing when you talk about like, gosh, she's changed, there's lots of music that I want to make, and I do identify as a Christian, but I don't always want to make worship music or Christian music. And a lot of the people that I've created music with, it was strictly in a worship setting. So then it's like, what happened to her? Like, is she lost? What's going on?
Yeah.
And I would have thought that was sort of like a one-off, like secret fear that I have. That's like literally every Christian kid that I work with and that I know has that fear that people are going to think that they're lost. That judgment that you get from people, from your parents or your childhood religious friends, it actually comes from a place of real concern on their part.
Yeah.
Which is tricky, because when you have had people that have known you your whole life and that really you trust and that you love, and you can feel like you're growing in a new direction and it feels right and true, and you are maybe feel more found than you ever have in your life. And then you have people planting those seeds that come from their own concern. You have to really solidify this. No, I trust my path. I trust myself. I can express my thoughts and feelings and even offer advice or support that maybe I wouldn't have offered as a Christian 20 years ago or 10 years ago, because I actually really trust that that I've been through some stuff, that I can help people, that I've learned some things. And the who do you think you are piece, I think it just gets so much smaller the more that you learn how to trust yourself. I mean, Jesus, he was literally in a culture his whole life that, told everyone how to get closer to God, exactly the things you needed to do to be on the correct spiritual path. And he's like, no, that's wrong. I trust the voice of God within me. And then he told us, you also have the same connection to God within you. So that self-trust piece is really big, and like looking for clues in the fruit of your life for well-being is really helpful. Talking to people that you trust that are, walking with you in this season is really helpful. But really at the end of the day, like trusting, like, no, I think I have something to offer. And even if I don't exactly hit the mark, I'll be okay.
Yeah.
Especially now, we live in like a 10-second attention span thing. I had a client recently that posted something on TikTok that he has like a pretty big following. And he posted something on TikTok that went viral, like crazy viral. And it was controversial. It was a controversial thing that he posted. I mean, I don't think it's controversial, but for that community. And it actually got on Fox News, like nationally. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
And it just like sent him for a whole, like, a whole spin, a whole thing. And we had to like basically come down to like, no, what I said is actually what I stand by. And people will literally forget about this in about 5 minutes. And they did. It's like, Fox News had another story the very next segment. So
crazy. Yeah.
So I think, did you have anything to add?
I was going to ask you, so now we've kind of unpacked a little bit what is going on. How do we work with that feeling of being afraid to be cringy, or even the feeling of I feel cringed, like I'm like ugh about someone else? So like what do you do when you're experiencing those things? Or maybe you're like identifying it, okay, these are the things that I'm feeling. What's like the next steps?
I think you just never express yourself ever. You just hide in a corner. You just
That's
hide
exactly
under a blanket. That's it. Thanks
Yeah.
for coming, guys. Yeah, it's funny. Even when we keep saying the word cringe, I keep doing this
Yeah.
ugh, like stick my tongue out, ugh, like that, like crinkled nose. Well, I think it's two questions, and I think the first is to really notice when you feel that secondhand embarrassment for other people. When you notice that you feel that cringiness. Everything is a projection. Everything's a mirror. So everything's just trying to teach you about yourself. And feeling secondhand embarrassment, feeling cringy, feeling cringed around somebody's whatever, video or expression or whatever, I think it really is asking yourself, what am I triggered by? So what is a younger version of me remembering when I'm judging this person? What does she feel like she either can't have that this person gets to have? Or what is she afraid of happening to this person that she's actually afraid would happen to her or him? And because you have that reticular activating system, that part of your brain that's always looking for patterns, as soon as you ask those questions and you begin to get curious, you'll see those moments and they won't slide by. You won't be like, ugh, unfollow. You might want to unfollow. It's okay to unfollow who triggers you. That's fine. But you'll be able to do the inner work to see, like, is there an unhealed version of me that needs to be seen, that needs to be worked with, that needs to be loved, that's showing up in my judgment of this person or my fear for this person?
Yeah. Which is basically the reparenting work.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So important. You can't get around inner child work.
Yeah.
Tell people all the time. And man, do they want to.
Oh, of course.
I mean, I probably wanted to at some point. At this point, I feel like I have such a loving relationship with younger versions of myself that I'm like so grateful for. I would never have wanted to skip that. So the second piece, I think, would be when you are afraid of being cringy.
Yes.
So a lot of creatives, I mean, I think the thing that makes me the most crazy is actually the thing that I struggle with the most. When I see really talented people not showing up, I'm like, why? What are you doing? Like, just get out there. You have things to say and music to create and books to write. And what are you doing?
Yeah.
And this is my kind of path for anyone that is interested in transformation or growth. Really, really ground into your true self. Remember, when you feel truly lit up and inspired, when you have a moment of safety, maybe it's even just a tiny little, Deb Dana calls it a glimmer, tiny little glimmer of safety. Remembering who you are, as you can also look at, who inspires you and showing you different pieces of who you are. But just kind of gently playing with the idea of like, wow, when I feel really loved and really safe, or that one time when I felt really seen and I was really like putting myself out there and it felt really good, who was that version of me?
Yeah.
Really knowing who your true self is helps you to separate yourself from the part of you that is afraid of being cringy. And then as soon as you can separate yourself from that part of you that's afraid of being cringy, you can work with that part of you. And what does that part of you need to feel safe enough to trust you to show up in the ways that you want to? And I think that that's an important way to say it, because we're not putting that young kid out on display. Does that make sense? Like, we're not actually saying like, no, just go out there. Like, why are you freaking out? Like, no, you just need to, that's not how we're relating to ourselves. We're saying, hey, listen, you had some really awful memories around being judged and abandoned for who you are. You never have to experience that ever again. You get to experience the joy of me expressing myself now, of us expressing who we truly are now. But you never have to go out there alone again. And when you can notice that, like, usually it's like this wall, this barrier that comes up when you think about posting a recipe or posting a song or, starting your first chapter of a book or whatever. really like getting curious about that part of you and just playing with that idea. What do I need? What does that part of me need to feel safe enough to trust me to move forward, knowing that like my true adult self is actually totally okay with judgment, with unfollows, with eye rolls. It's like really not a big deal at all. What do you think? Do you have anything to add?
Yeah. Yeah, as you were just sharing that, it just got me thinking about like the concept that you talk about of emotionally sustainable creativity. And that's basically what that is. It's not overriding those parts of you that feel really scared and tending to those younger parts as they come up. Even if it feels like, I'd rather just be able to just do the thing that I want to do, and this feels like a setback, it's actually not. It's going to be the thing that supports you to create in a sustainable way for however long you want to. Even if the outcome looks different, even if you're creating something totally different than what you want to do right now in like 10 years' time, it will set you up for success to be able to do that in a way no matter what comes up. Whether that's feeling cringy or whatever it is. I think totally. You can apply that process to so many different things, not just this idea of being cringy, but any emotion that you feel towards showing up in your true self.
Yes. Yeah, it's like it's a foundation that you're laying. And a lot of people will do these really, really big projects without tending to the young parts of them. And we see the downfall of that. I've experienced personally the downfall of that, like pushing myself, overriding my nervous system to get on stage, really overcoupled fear and performance. Like it blended those two things in my brain, and they never should have been blended. And you'll see people that cancel big tours, or they'll, have a drug problem, or they'll like be these amazing geniuses, and they'll, have 1,000 really unhealthy relationships or habits. And so, yes, it is emotionally sustainable creativity that we're really talking about here. So, well, go out there and be cringe, guys. I hope that this encouraged you to understand that part of you more and to work with any of those barriers that come up for all of my sweet creatives. Anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Well, I am Courtney. If you want to find me, I am at Courtney Lan on Instagram or CourtneyLancaster.co. And what about you, Em, if they want to find you?
Yeah, my Instagram is msmith, but the Smith doesn't have the I in it because someone already took that Instagram handle, and I have one of the most common names you could possibly have.
Yes. Yeah.
And then my website is msmith.co, and then my Substack is the same.
Perfect. Okay, well, we love you all. Bye.
Yeah.